Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to this explainer where we're going to embark on a really fascinating journey to uncover the true purpose behind law. We interact with the law literally every single day, from just stopping at a traffic light to, say, signing a lease or a contract. But we rarely actually stop to ask ourselves what the law is at its absolute core. And that brings us to a huge central philosophical question, one that has honestly puzzled scholars for centuries. What is the true purpose of law? Is it merely this rigid set of rules backed up by the constant threat of punishments? Or is it something much deeper, maybe a living, breathing framework that actually holds human civilization together? Today, we're going to challenge those everyday, surface-level assumptions about what our legal systems actually do. To start us off, think of the law not just as a giant list of do-nots, but rather as a massive root system. Law forms the very roots from which three foundational pillars of our lives grow: justice, order, and society. It's the formal mechanism that a community uses to organize its affairs, resolve inevitable disputes, and protect its people from harm. And just like a tree, without those deep roots, the branches above simply cannot survive. Section 1. Beyond rules and punishments. To truly understand this, we need to peel back the layers of the legal onion. We'll start with one of the most common historical ways people have defined it: John Austin's imperative theory of law. Now, what's really interesting about this is how stark it is. Austin basically viewed law simply as a command issued by a sovereign. Picture a king who absolutely doesn't take orders from anyone else, directing subjects who are just in the habit of obeying. And if they don't obey, well, the command is backed by a sanction or a punishment. It's a very top-down, coercive view of how the world works. But let's contrast Austin's incredibly strict, sovereign-focused view with the perspective of Sir John Salmond. Salmond shifted the emphasis entirely away from some commanding sovereign and pointed it straight toward the courts. He defined law as the body of principles recognized and applied by the state in the administration of justice. So for Salmond, the ultimate goal wasn't just blind obedience, it was justice. A rule only truly becomes a law when it's accepted and acted upon by the courts to actually achieve a just outcome. Section 2. The core functions of law. This shift from mere commands to the actual administration of justice moves us to the next layer of our journey. We're going to look at law not just as a threat hanging over our heads, but as a highly practical engine for running a society. Think of the law as having three core indispensable functions. First, it acts as a shield for protection. Without it, as the philosopher Thomas Hobbes famously argued, society would descend into pure anarchy, a state of nature where life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Criminal law prohibits violence and theft to prevent exactly that. Second, it's a scale. Law aims to deliver justice. That could be distributive justice, fairly allocating resources and opportunities, or corrective justice, fixing things when someone gets harmed. And finally, it brings order, promoting peace and harmony by providing institutional mechanisms, like courts, to resolve disputes peacefully, instead of us just resorting to private vengeance. Section 3. Law as social engineering. But here's where it gets really cool. Law doesn't just react to problems, it can be incredibly proactive. This introduces a fascinating concept. Law isn't just a static rulebook, it's an active, deliberate tool used to completely reshape society. The American jurist Roscoe Pound stated that the aim of law is to produce the greatest possible satisfaction of human wants with the least sacrifice. This is the very heart of what's known as sociological jurisprudence. Pound basically framed the lawyer, the judge, and the legislator not just as rule enforcers, but as literal social engineers. And this brilliantly illustrates Pound's theory. Imagine a society as a massive set of interlocking gears. You've got all these competing demands, right? Individual rights, public interest, economic welfare, and moral values all constantly grinding against each other. The social engineer uses the law to design and maintain a system that perfectly balances these diverse and competing interests, minimizing the friction and avoiding waste, all to keep the machinery of society running smoothly toward progress. To ground this abstract theory in some concrete reality, let's look at how law has been used for social engineering in India. These examples aren't just minor rules. They're massive, deliberate attempts to abolish social evils and engineer a better society. You have the constitutional abolition of untouchability, the Hindu Succession Act, which legally granted daughters equal inheritance rights, and the Right to Information Act of 2005. These are highly specific laws that consciously altered deeply entrenched social practices and completely shifted the country's societal landscape. Section 4. the law and morality divide. Let's move to and see how this builds, because if the law actively shapes society, we absolutely have to ask a really difficult question. Is the purpose of law to enforce morality? This relationship between law and morality is one of the most enduring puzzles in all of jurisprudence. On one hand, there's a massive overlap. Rules against murder, theft, and fraud have obvious moral content. The law criminalizes conduct that society universally finds deeply immoral. But on the other hand, there is a strict separation. Not everything immoral is illegal. For example, lying to your friend in a daily conversation is generally considered wrong and immoral, but it usually isn't a legal wrong. And I mean, honestly, it's a good thing too, because if every little white lie we told was actually illegal, we'd have to turn half our cities into prisons. This exact separation brings us to a major modern tension: public morality versus constitutional morality. Public morality relies heavily on traditional societal views, historical customs, and basically whatever the majority considers acceptable at the time. Constitutional morality, on the flip side, is anchored strictly in the core written values of the Constitution, things like fundamental equality, individual autonomy, and human dignity. And sometimes what the public traditionally accepts as moral deeply, deeply conflicts with those constitutional guarantees. We can see exactly how courts navigate this tough divide by looking at two landmark 2018 cases from the Indian Supreme Court. In the Navtej Singh Johar case, the court decriminalized consensual homosexual conduct. And in the Sabrimala temple entry case, the court struck down a long-standing tradition that excluded women of menstruating age from the temple. In both of these instances, the court's legal reasoning was rooted strictly in constitutional morality. The court determined that principles of individual dignity, privacy, and autonomy simply must prevail over traditional public morality and societal customs. So here, the law deliberately prioritized constitutional rights over popular tradition. Section 5. The ultimate purpose of law. Okay, so we've moved past simple rules, we've explored the gears of social engineering, and we've navigated that tricky morality divide. Now we finally reach the innermost core of our journey, the ultimate philosophical ideal. To understand this, we look to the Eastern perspective. While Western positive law often focuses heavily on state authority and court administration, classical and modern Indian perspectives view the ultimate purpose of law through the lens of fundamental truth, or satya, and human emancipation. It's not just about what can be efficiently enforced by the police, it's about what is fundamentally true and genuinely just for humanity. Mahatma Gandhi deeply, deeply embodied this view. He literally equated law with truth. For Gandhi, if a law was inconsistent with truth, like, say, a racist colonial law or a highly discriminatory custom, it commanded absolutely no moral obligation of obedience. He was profoundly distrustful of coercive state law, the kind backed by police and prisons that Austin was talking about earlier. Instead, Gandhi believed true law springs organically from community consensus, love, and service, rather than from sheer brute force. So the crucial point is how this philosophical goal of human dignity is actually achieved in a modern state. While Gandhi distrusted the state apparatus, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chief architect of the Indian Constitution, took a completely different approach to reach that exact same goal of justice. Ambedkar embraced constitutional law as a deliberate weapon. He saw it as the ultimate, necessary tool for actively destroying oppressive social structures, safeguarding the vulnerable, and formally securing human dignity through strictly enforceable fundamental rights. From Austin's strict commands to Pound's intricate social engineering to Ambedkar's powerful weapon for dignity, it's clear the law is so much more than just a dry rulebook. It is the very foundation of how we build a just society. Which leaves us with one final, provocative thought, one that I hope makes you reconsider the rules all around you. If a law fundamentally fails to deliver justice, is it truly a law at all? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the systems that shape our world.